Okay, now
You are ignoring us.
we have this idea of Pirsumei Nisa, and Pirsumei Nisa is something we do on Pesach, on Purim, and Hanukkah. But on Pesach and Purim, we do the Pirsumei Nisa by reading a text. This is what happened. This is the miracle that we are talking about. That's on Pesach, the text is called Hagadah, and on Purim, the text is called Megilah, right? The Megillah of Esther. On Hanukkah, what do? On Hanukkah, we light candles. In order to understand what the lighting of a candle is supposed to be saying to people who don't know the story, I mean, after all, if somebody doesn't know about Yetziat Mitzrayim, about the Exodus from Egypt, you read the Hagadah, and at the end of the evening, everybody knows. I mean, it's not possible to be unaware of what happened to the Jews at Yetziat Mitzrayim. And similarly, even if you've never heard of Haman, when you read the story in the Megillah, it's very hard not to suddenly become aware of the miraculous events of Purim. But when it comes to Hanukkah, we light the menorah. Now, who sees that menorah? People who know the story, or people who don't know the story. If you don't know the story, I'm not sure that you get that much out of the lit menorah. And if you do know the story, if you don't know the story, it doesn't do much. And if you do know the story, I guess it also doesn't do much. So I remind you that in the Gemara, just one second. Look at this, it's like a lot of screaming up. Please record. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I said that you didn't try to get me to record. Okay, now listen. In the Gemara, there are 3 options for doing the mitzvah of lighting the candle on Purim. Even though we all do it the 3rd way, it's important to remember that there were 3 ways that the Gemara has actually designated. Now, the first is Ner Ish Ubeito. And the second is Ner L'Kol Echad. The first one, Ner Ishu Beito, means that on every night of Hanukkah you light 1 candle. It doesn't matter how many people there are in the household. The second level is Ner L'Kol Echad, that if you have 4 people in the house or 5 people in the household, the first night you light 2, 5, the second night 10, etc. The third way, and the way that we do it, actually do it, is the first night we do 1, the second night we do 2, the night we do 3, and on that there is the famous Machloket Beit Shammai. Where Beit Shammai said the first night you do 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and Beit Hillel said the first night you do 1 and go up to 8. So according to Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, it's important to remember, especially the message is the number 8. I mean, that's what people understand eventually. If you light 1 the first night, 2 the second night, 3, it turns out that there are 8 nights, and each of those nights are different, special. And if each of the nights of Hanukkah are special, that takes me back to the idea that there was a miracle that had something to do with the oil right? There was a miracle on the night of Hanukkah. There was a miracle on the night of Hanukkah. Which night? Every one of the 8 nights. So there are some people who say that the oil was divided up into 8 parts. Others say that the oil just burned down in 8 instead of burning down. No, but in any event, every day of Hanukkah, of the 8 days that we use to commemorate Hanukkah, every one of those days there was a miracle. So even every one of those days there was a miracle. And I only learned that from Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, who said, Ner ish ner lekol echad ve'echad, and Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel said, ascending or descending. Right? So I go back and I ask you this question. As we've seen, the original method for celebrating Hanukkah, for lighting the candles, was Ner ish ubeito. Every night, we lit one candle. Every night. It took time until Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel got accepted. They were so accepted that no one did 1 or 2 anymore. But I ask you, what does Ner Ish Ubeito mean? What does it mean to say that we light one candle for each household? What Pirsumei Nisa could there possibly be in that act? What is it that people understand? That there was one candle, and the second night there was one candle, the 5th night there was one candle. There's something here that defies my understanding. So I want to go through several things, several sources quickly with you, if we are able. There's a pasuk in Tetzaveh, the beginning of Tetzaveh, which is at the end of Shmos. Ata tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael. V'yikchu elecha shemen zayit zach tatit la'ma'or la'alot ner tamid. So you know that in the Beit HaMikdash, so this is talking about the Mishkan, the tabernacle, there was a menorah. And that menorah had a ner tamid, whatever that means. A perpetual ner, always. There was always a ner. So Moshe Rabbeinu is directed to command Bnei Yisrael that they should take shemen zayit zach, oil from the olives, a clean oil. Katit, the oil that comes out of the first squeezing. Lama'or. Lama'or means for the light. La'alot ner tamid. Why is this candle called Tamid? Why is it called Tamid? So Rashi says that Tamid, Kol Laila V'Laila, Karui Tamid. Which means, when did the Kohen Gadol light the candles in the Beit HaMikdash or in the Mishkan? Every late in the afternoon towards evening. And the candles burned until morning. Until morning. And that's called Tamid. That's called always. Not because they never stop burning, but because they relit perpetually every single night. Kimosha Ata Omer, Rashi says, teaching us a little bit of Hebrew language, Olat Tamid. There's an Olah sacrifice, which is called Tamid. And what does Tamid mean? Tamid means that it's given, that the sacrifice is given perpetually. Every morning, it's given. Every afternoon, it's given. But not that it's given all the time. Ve'eino ela miyom liyom. That's what Rashi says. This sacrifice is given from one day to the next. From one day to the next. Eina ela miyom liyom. Even though it's only from day to day, it's still called, what is it called? Tamid. Another case of making a mincha, something, flour fried in a pan, also is called tamid. Ve'ena ela machzita b'boker machzita b'erev. It's the same kind of situation where the sacrifice is given in the morning and the afternoon. Right? Okay? That's enough for us. So Rashi explains lahalot ner tamid means that the candle is going to be lit from time to time. Every afternoon towards evening, the candle will be lit. It'll burn until the next morning. And that's called tamid. The idea that it's done perpetually. Now, the Ibn Ezra, if we look at the Ibn Ezra says something that's a little bit different here. You see the beginning of the pasuk, you shall direct, instruct, command, all of those words, mitzvah, olamit, ala tzibur, it's a mitzvah that is forever, olamit. Al hatzibur latei tamid, always to bring for the menorah, shemen zayit, la'alot ner tamid. So there's a certain perpetuality in the bringing of the oil. But then if you look at the end of the Ibn Ezra, we haven't got time to go through the Ibn Ezra word for word, but the Ibn Ezra says, V'tam tamid, kol laila v'laila. Every night, the menorah is lit. It's not lit all the time. This is in agreement with Rashi. But then he says, V'yesh milat tamid kashem mizot. There is a word, the same word tamid, is sometimes reflects a situation which is more perpetual. Vayal mitzchot tamid, that the Kohen puts the tzitz on his forehead tamid. Kasher hu sama mitzvah. Now we're showing he puts on his hat. L'olam yasimu alav tzitz hakodesh. He will always, without fail, put the tzitz on his head. So the Ibn Ezra says, look, in this case I agree with Rashi, that the word tamid means regularly, at the same time every day. But the word tamid can also mean a greater perpetuality. It could. And that's what the Ramban, that's what the Ibn Ezra teaches us. So we have a pasuk, and we know that the candle that is lit, there is a candle, singular, ner, which is called tamid, and Rashi says that tamid means it's lit at night, and the Ibn Ezra says also that it's lit at night. Okay, now let's look at the Ramban. Since we're making a little survey, the Ramban begins by quoting Rashi. So we know what Rashi said, we don't have to go through that again. We know exactly what Rashi said. Let me just change this. Umedrash Raboteinu Eino Kain. So the Ramban says, listen, the way the Chachamim understood this pasuk is different. Ela kach shanu b'sifri. Kach shanu b'sifri. Sifri is the Midrash Halacha on Bamidbar and Devarim. And here in parentheses, they tell us Reish Ba'alotcha. Ba'alotcha, of course, is in Bamidbar. And the pasuk says, Ya'iru Shivat HaNeirot. That's what the pasuk says. That the 7 candles, you remember that the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Mishkan, had 7 candles, right? 3, and 1 in the middle. So what does the Rabboteinu, what did they say? Ya'iru Shivat HaNeirot. Shomei Anisha Yudokim La'olam. To me, it seems that the pasuk is saying, what did the pasuk say? Ya'iru Shivat HaNeirot, that the 7 candles should always be lit. Shomei Anisha Yudokim La'olam. So I mean, the Chachamim said that this must mean that the candles should be lit forever. Talmud Lomar Me'erev Ad Boker. So there's another pasuk, right in Vayikra, where it says that the candle should be lit Me'erev Ad Boker. So the drasha says, Me'erev Ad Boker, do you mean that it has to burn from the night to the morning, the candles? Yachol you don't keep me erev ad boker v'yichaber. Maybe the pasuk means that they should burn all night and then you put them out in the morning. Talmud lomar ya'iru shivat haneirot. Oh, so now comes the pasuk. Our pasuk in Bamidbar, it says ya'iru shivat haneirot. Okay, tzad ya'iru shivat haneirot me'erev ad boker me'erev ad boker. It was this way Chazal say. The Chazal say, look at you light the candles at night, they burn until the morning. But you need them past the morning. And then they say, Lifnei Hashem Tamid. That's what it says in the pasuk. As it says in the pasuk in the beginning of Malos, it says, Lifnei Hashem Tamid, before God always, Sheyehei Neir Ma'aravi Dolek Tadir. There you have it. Let me highlight it so we can all get excited together. So the Medrash Chazal have discovered a contradiction. On the one hand, it says Me'erev ad boker. Me'erev ad boker means all night until the morning, and then you either put it out or it goes out itself. But then there's another pasuk in the beginning of Baloksa that says Lifnei Hashem Tamid, which sounds like it means it should always be burning. The answer is that there's one candle that is called Ner Ma'aravi Dolek Tadir. Let me just write this. I'll write it on the whiteboard. That there's one candle that burns all the time, and that candle is called Ma'aravi. That candle is called Ma'aravi. And that's not so. There are several 7 candles. 6 burn all night until the morning, and then they go out or they're put out. But one of them, which is called Ma'aravi, it burns all night into the morning. I mean, all night and all day. I'm sorry, all night and all day. So which is it? Which is the Ner Ma'aravi? So there are two opinions. But one opinion is that when you light the candle, when the Kohen went to light the candles, assuming that this candelabrum is standing east-west in the Beit HaMikdash, which is one of the possibilities, without a doubt, east-west. Yeah. If the candelabrum is east-west, you start lighting the candles. From here. This is the first candle you light. So having lit the first candle, you created the west, right? Because you light the first candle to the east, and the one to the left of it is called the west, right? That's the Ma'arav. How will I do this? There it is. You see, you lit the first candle to the east, and the next one is called Ma'aravi. The next one, I'm giving you one of the opinions. There are other opinions, but that doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is that this Ner Ma'aravi, according to Chazal, as quoted by the Ramban, they said Ner Ma'aravi Dolek Tadir, which means that this candle, according to this interpretation, of course, that this candle always was burning, so that even though the other candles were filled with enough oil to last a short period of time, right, from the night until the morning, right? Even in the winter months, where the night is very long, that's the amount of oil you put in, whether it's a half a log or some other amount. You put in that amount of oil, and the candles burnt all night until the morning. But the candle of the called Ma'aravi, that burns all night long and all day long. Now, why did it burn all day long? Did it burn all day long because they put in more oil? Well, that question is addressed in a Gemara in Yoma, which I want to we want to take a look at. Yoma, Taf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph. Yeah. Arba'im Shana Shishimei Shimon HaTzadik. You know that Shimon HaTzadik was in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Shimon HaTzadik is called Shimon HaTzadik was the end of the period of Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, and he introduced the period of the Zugot. which was followed by the Tanaim. Now, Shimon HaTzadik either was the Kohen Gadol, or his grandfather was the Kohen Gadol, or his grandson, but he was a special person. And even though we don't understand exactly when he lived, or when we're talking about, there is the story about Shimon HaTzadik, that the great, we don't want to get into that right now. But those of you who are interested can follow it up. All I'm interested in is a Braita. And the Braita says, Toda Rabbana, right, introducing a Mishnah or a Braita, Arba'im Shana Sheshimei Shimon HaTzadik, during the 40 years that Shimon HaTzadik was the Kohen Gadol, was the Kohen, or some sort of a Kohen. So there are several things that went on during his reign, the third of which was Ner Ma'aravi, Dolek. Mikan va'elach pa'amim dolek, pa'amim kava. During his 40-year reign, the Ner Ma'aravi. Now we know what the Ner Ma'aravi is, that special candle in the Beit HaMikdash that burns all day. So he says after he died, Pamim Dolek, Pamim Kava. Sometimes it would burn all day, and other times it would. If you look at the Rashi says, Ne ma'aravi dolek, lachar shekavu sha'ar kol haneirot. After all the other 6 candles went out, v'av al pi shebimenu matchil ladlik arvit, bo hayav l'sayem hatavat neirot shacharit. It was the last one to have itself, the cup cleaned in the morning. V'hu edut she'ashchina sherabi Yisrael. And this miracle that the Ner Tamid burnt longer than any of the other candles, this miracle was an indication, Rashi says, it indicated Shashchina Sharabi Yisrael, that the Shechina dwells in Yisrael. And this is actually, Rashi is actually repeating what the Gemara in Shabbat, the Gemara about Hanukkah teaches us. So if you look, mostly Rav Sheshes asked the following question. Michutz leparochet ha'idut ya'aroch. There's a pasuk, and the pasuk says, "Look with me." It's a pasuk of Vayikra. Michutz leparochet ha'idut ba'ol mo'ed ya'aroch oto aron mi'erev ad boker. These candles were found outside of the covering of the Aron HaEdut, and Aaron HaKohen would set them to burn from the evening until the morning. Livnei Hashem Tamid, it says first evening till morning, then it says Tamid always. So the Rav Sheshet says, Michutz leparochet ha'idut ya'aroch. So he asked this question, V'chilo rahu tzarich. Do we need the light of the candle? After all, at night, there wasn't anybody in the Mishkan or in the Beit HaMikdash. V'lo kol arba'im shana shalchu b'nei Yisrael b'midbar, that all the 40 years that they were in the desert, I don't know. I think what that means is that they followed the light of the pillar of fire. So they didn't need a candle. Ella Eiduti. It says, Bichutz leparochet ha'edut. Eiduti. Lebai olam. Right? There is this edut, a witness for all those who come into the world, Shashchina Shorabi Yisrael. That the Shechina is somehow there with Bnei Yisrael. So the Gemara says, my edut. What is it that is giving witness that the Shekhinah is with the Jewish people? What exactly is the witness? Omar Rav. Rav said, Zoner Ma'aravi Shenotim B'Shemin Kemidas Chevroteo. He says, the Ner Ma'aravi. Now we talked about that. One of them is the Ner Ma'aravi, the middle one or the one on the side. One of them is the Ner Ma'aravi. So the Gemara says, Omar Rav, how you put the same amount of oil in the main Ner Ma'aravi as you do in the others. Umimena hayam adlik, and you lit from it. Uba hayam isayem, and that was the last one that you lit. So Rashi explains Rashi says Hatavata Nerot Shedalak Kol Hayom, the candle that went up on and burned all day long. The Einam Mizivo Ada Arab, they couldn't fix it, clean it, set it up for the next day, as a lot of people like to do on Hanukkah until the night. So it turns out that there was a miracle. They didn't need the light, but they needed the miracle. The miracle of the Hanukkah menorah. The miracle of the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash was that the Ner Ma'aravi burnt all day, even though it started out with the same amount of oil. And even though it was the first one that was used and the last one that was clean, it burnt all day, and the other candles only burnt all night. That's what the Gemara said, and that proves, that's what the Eidus the Cholboi Olam. Just 1 second. It gives witness to the fact that the Shekhinah, that the divine presence is felt amongst Am Yisrael, in the Jewish people. So we see that after the time of Shimon HaTzadik, it was a little shaky. People it was not clear to them what their obligations were. That's when the Hellenists took over the Hasmoneans. The Hasmonean kings, became Hellenists. The Beit HaMikdash was not able to operate properly. All of that is what happened when the Hashmonaim came. We're talking about the dates, but the Hashmonaim understood that the situation in the Beit HaMikdash was intolerable because the Ner Ma'aravi was flickering. The Ner Ma'aravi did not present itself as proof that the Shekhinah is Shora B'Yisrael. Before I go on, I want to just look at the chats for a minute. Is there a chat? Okay. So I think that that after the Chashmonaim purified the temple and used only special oil to light the menorah, so at that time there is no doubt that the Ner Ma'aravi, that the westernmost candle, again burnt in this miraculous way, not only from night to morning, but from night to night, 24 hours, even though it started out with the same amount, with the same exact amount of oil. And so when the Jews started lighting the menorah, and this will get back to where we were, when the Jews began lighting the menorah in honor of what the Chashmonaim did, they lit it Ner Ish Ubeso. Ner Ish Ubeso. Because what candle were they lighting? They were lighting the Ner Ma'aravi, the candle that was returned to its miraculous status by the Chashmonaim, who purified and cleansed the temple and would only use oil that had passed the rigorous standards that were imposed by the halakha. And so the Ner Ishu Beito, the Ner Ishu Beito is the Ner Ma'aravi that was lit at that time. Eventually, this was no longer the case because the Beit HaMikdash itself had become defiled again. And so Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, in order to save the memory of what had happened, knowing full well that the Ner Ma'aravi was not acting miraculously as we hoped it would, they refocused on the other miracle, the miracle of the 8 days, the miracle of the Pach Shemen, the miracle which was really less important. Because what importance is there to claim that God can do a miracle? I mean, of course God can do a miracle. So that the essential kiyum of the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah goes back to Ner Ishu Beito. And that means that everybody in their house on Hanukkah is lighting a Ner Ma'aravi, a memory of the fact that the Shekhinah showed itself in the camp of Israel in the desert and then in the temple of Israel, because that Ner Ma'aravi burnt all night into the morning. So that the Pirsumei Nisa of Hanukkah is different. The Pirsumei Nisa of Pesach is to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. The Pirsumei Nisa of Purim is to tell the story of Purim. But the Pirsumei Nisa of Hanukkah is kind of a wish. It's a hope. It's like to say we remember that there's a Ner Ma'aravi, and we remember that the candle burned all night long. And we're hoping that that will happen again. And that development is seen here in this two-step process, Ner Ishu Beito, leading up to the Machloket, Beit Shammai, and Beit Hillel. Okay, I wish you all a happy Hanukkah. There's one day left. make the most of it. It's a thinking holiday. It's a holiday in which we have to decide, a little bit about who we are and what our goals are. And this is, of course, to a certain extent, a problem. We see it very clearly in Eretz Israel today, things that are happening that shouldn't happen, and anger, no one's sure exactly what they're angry about. And so Hanukkah is a good time to think about what we want to do with ourselves and what miracle we'd like to focus on and what it is, what future could be built best because of the Pirsumei Nisa of the past. Chag Urim Sameach, I wish you well. We'll see you again when Web Yeshiva begins the next semester. Kol Tov. Oh, there is a chat. 1 second.